Welcome to History on Blast, episode 16. This demon fights fascists. I'm Hillary, and I'll be your host, as on today's episode, we're going to put the Nazis on blast. And I know what you're thinking. They did a lot, so what specifically could we possibly be putting them on blast for this time? Well, in this episode, and even though I know, it is January 1st when this is going to be dropping, but give me just a little extension on that Christmas season, because in this episode, it's time to talk about my boy, Krampus. More specifically, the time that the Nazis tried to ban Krampus in Austria. But first, this month in history. On January 20th, 1945, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was inaugurated to his fourth term as President of the United States. His first term started in 1933, and his accomplishments included seeing the nation through the Great Depression and leading the nation to war against the Nazi Reich. No other president will ever serve as long as he did, since after his presidency, a law was passed to limit any president to 2 terms. So, back to Krampus. I think the best place to begin on this is what is Krampus. Basically, Krampus, for those of you who aren't familiar, is an aspect of European folklore associated with Christmas. Basically, Krampus is a goat demon, traditionally depicted with a red face, with horns, decked in chains, with a sack on his back that contains birch switches and screaming children. Because that's right, Krampus's job is to punish wicked children. He is the counterpart and companion to St. Nicholas, Santa Claus. And where St. Nicholas brings gifts and sweets and toys and things, Krampus brings a beating. So, what we're talking about specifically in relation to Krampus is 1923 Austria. At this point, Krampus had become ubiquitous. Krampus was a necessary part of the Christmas season, with the Krampus run, and holiday cards had Krampus on them, and it was to the point where even St. Nicholas really was more or less gone. Like, St. Nicholas would show up, and there were definitely costumed Santas, and Santa had some part in Christmas, but the vast majority of people believed that the toys and gifts and punishments were being brought by Krampus. All right, cool, sure, whatever. I know I, for one, would love to have the toys brought to me by the literal goat demon. But, so historically prior to that, Krampus was a part of the local pagan beliefs as well, with Krampus being the child of Hel or Hela, the goddess of death, ruler of Helheim, and daughter of Loki. Cool. So, this is the part where, in order to explain the next bit, I need to do something I definitely didn't think I was going to be doing when this drops officially the year 2019, but apparently I'm going to need to do a bit of a deep dive on the differences between Nazi fascism and Austrofascism, which, wow. Okay, so the 1923 election in Austria brought the Dollfuss regime to the forefront. This included groups such as the Fatherland's Front and the Christian Social Party. An important thing to note with the difference between National Socialism, aka the Nazi Party in Germany, and the Christian Social Party and the Fatherland's Front in Austria, is that while the German Nazi Party was largely Protestant or pagan, because of there's a whole thing that I could make its whole own episode about the SS and how badly they were trying to worship the ancient Norse gods, and they were doing it very badly. But that's a whole other thing I don't want to get into today. So, but anyway, so the Austro-fascists were Catholic. Austria is predominantly was at the time, a Catholic country. And one of the major things that they wanted to do was restore the quote-unquote purity of their Catholicism, which, if you are at all familiar with the Catholic Church in its entirety, restoring the purity of the Catholic Church is very hard, because every time they roll into a new country, they're like, ooh, what are the major precepts of your religion? Why, yes, we also that. And that's how you get things like Christianity moving into Egypt, where they venerated Osiris, Isis, and their son Horus, and all of a sudden the Trinity of the Father, the Father, Mary, and the Son becomes very important, and the similarities between the depictions of Isis and baby Horus and the Madonna and baby Jesus. But again, that's a different episode. So they're like, okay, we need to get rid of this literal chained demon that is giving our children candy. Why did we think this was a good idea? And that's right. The Austro-fascists of the Dollfuss regime, aka Austrian Nazis, banned Krampus. I really wish that I could tell you more about why they did this and what they were doing and what the aftermath of this was. But other than the fact that I know for a fact that it showed up not once but twice in the New York Times, I can't actually find a lot of information on this that's a primary source from the period. Mostly I'm finding a lot of articles that are like, oh my god, let me tell you about this one time that the Nazis banned Krampus. Because it turns out that the articles in the New York Times are behind a paywall. So, the other theory that I have been able to find is that, as you presumably know, as we all presumably know, the Nazi Party, the fascist movement as a whole, their biggest enemy, as far as they were concerned, was communism. Like, as a whole, fascists hate communists, communists hate fascists. It's a thing. There were literal fights on the streets of Berlin, like full-on fist fights. And remember what I said before with the traditional depiction of Krampus having a red face, and Krampus brings gifts to everyone who has been good and done their work. And one of the predominant beliefs regarding the Nazi opposition to Krampus is that Krampus's sort of modus operandi was viewed as dangerously communist. Because if we give the children candy, they will become communists. I guess. Even up through the 1950s, even after the end of World War II, the Austrian government was still opposed to Krampus, which I think lends some credence to the anti-communist message, rather than merely the purity of their Catholicism, let us say. Because moving into the 1950s, you get into the Cold War, and then everyone is afraid of communists. Everyone. So, Um, but of course, as we know, Krampus has made a major return, which is kind of awesome. You can go see Krampus Days, Krampusnacht, Krampus Night, in a lot of major cities. Specifically, Krampusnacht is December 5th because St. Nicholas Day is December the 6th. So the idea is that Krampus comes first, punishes the naughty children, takes the worst of them away in the bag, and then everyone who's left gets a present from St. Nicholas because they were good. There are a lot of regional variances with regards to Krampus celebrations, but typically Krampus is very popular in Europe, in Central Europe, mostly around Austria, Germany, that sort of area. There's Icelandic Krampus, there's Italian Krampus, there's Croatian Krampus, North American Krampus is really starting to grow. But the most important thing to remember, I think, as we leave this festive Christmas time behind us and boldly go forth into a new year, is to remember the true meaning of Krampus, which is that this monster fights fascists. And I think that's going to be our episode. So by the time this drops, it is going to be 2019 officially. So Happy New Year to everybody out there. I hope you had a very festive December, celebrating whatever it is that you might celebrate, or not celebrating if that's how you do. As always, if you've got any feedback, you can always send that to me at historyonblast@gmail.com, or I'm on Twitter at historyonblast. If you want to just stop by and say hi, go right ahead. I am always here to talk. I love history, as you can probably guess, and I'm always available to talk about it. In the new year, if you're looking to share podcasts with friends, always be sure to send some people our way. I would love to grow the audience, and just think, the more people you have listening, the more people are going to get your weird jokes. So, with that, thank you for listening, and as always, thank you to Defy the Mall for the use of their song Keeper of Histories for the intro and outro of our program, and thank you.